Hi guys. I'll be here until you stop asking questions. Uh, we'll see if anyone shows up. Go ahead and just go through the some of the notes that we had that we put out this morning. Um, okay, I'll I'll answer Trevor. Trevor, I see your question. Um, there could be. I think part of the issue is what we're going to raise and what we're projected to raise in the funds won't appropriately expire in 3 to 5 years. We would probably have to look at a much longer sunset of like 15 or 20, which I'm not opposed to that. Um, I don't think any of the counts would be opposed to that either. That's part of the reason we went towards the side of restricting it directly towards infrastructure instead of it being allowed to be used for anything and then saying it's going to be used for infrastructure. These funds would be restricted for use for infrastructure projects only. And we are talking about infrastructure with water lines, sewer lines, and then, street sidewalks, things like that. Uh, so it could have a sunset. Sunsets are hard to project. The only nice thing is it's not like we're giving the money to someone else and being tied to it. So I don't think it would be a bad idea to add a sunset to that. Um, just as a home rule community, the city can kind of move those goals. Um, but no, I don't disagree. I don't think it's a terrible idea to sunset. I just think it's hard to project, and we don't know the full cost of the projects that we need to have done yet. We have 6 or 7 projects that really need to be done in the next 5 to 7 years. Um, we're looking at probably $20 million worth of projects by the time it's all said and done. Things are expensive right now. So not a terrible idea. Not it's been loosely discussed. It's not been discussed in depth, but it's not you know we weren't looking for a sunset in that regard. Um, the meeting was announced in the council meeting. We live stream all of our meetings. Um, I wish it had been posted on Facebook sooner. I've been on vacation, so I've been kind of out of the loop there, but it is what it is. We're dealing with it now. Um, guys, we're trying to be as transparent as we possibly can here. We have projects that need to be completed, some of them much more time sensitive due to the IDOT timeline. Um, I hate that it was announced or posted this morning, but we very much announced it at the last council meeting when we actually approved to move forward with the ordinance uh, with a 5-0 vote. All commissioners voted to move forward with the ordinance, and we also chose to set a public hearing for a home rule sales tax. The city is not required to do a public hearing for any sales tax that it implements, but we kind of thought it was in the best, it was in the best light to let the taxpayers know that this is what we were exploring and this is why we were exploring it. Um, so we kind of dropped the ball in getting it out there a little bit more prevalently, and we should absolutely take responsibility for that. Um, Shane, great question. I actually worked on this last night. Probably can't read very much of it. It was my chicken scratch on the airplane as I was stuck circling Lubbock through weather. That was a fun time. First and foremost, West Main Street from Maple Street to DuQuoin Street. That is the focus of a very large overhaul from the Illinois Department of Transportation that they plan to begin let bidding, I think in Q2. I would have to look at my notes from the engineer for this area. But basically what happened in West Frankfort with redoing storm sewers, widening the streets, all of that is happening on West Main Street from Maple Street near the square all the way down to DuQuoin Street. Um, so with one exception, well, a couple of exceptions, no new roundabouts. But we have to relocate a water line and a sewer line there. They're currently in the state's right of way. We have to get them out of the road before the state will even start their project. So we have to be done and tidied up before the state will even drop a shovel. So that is a big move, and the sewer has to be done open pit because we have to connect it. So it gets pretty expensive pretty quickly. After that, the state is planning on moving directly over to West Main and completely overhauling West Main. Again, same issue. We have to get our lines out of their street. The line from the square to McLeansboro Street is in better shape than McLeansboro to Stuyvesant. But the nice thing about East Main is we are currently in the midst of doing a project from the state. We are completely redoing all the water lines from East Main to Joplin Street and from the railroad tracks in Frisco Street to McLeansboro Street. All of those water lines will be brand new. So that section of water main on East Main in front of the high school and the Illinois Department of Natural Resources building will all be brand new. So we'll have to do from the square to the tracks, and then from McLeansboro Street to Stuyvesant Street. As pretty much all of you know, the line from McLeansboro Street to Stuyvesant Street is held together by Band-Aids. It breaks every single time you look at it wrong. and it's pretty embarrassing when we constantly have to cut up that road. It's a super, super old and brittle line, and it has to be replaced. So again, same situation. We have to get our project done before the state will do theirs. The kind of silver lining in having to do these projects is two of our main streets are going to get substantial overhauls with storm sewer, sidewalks, widening, all of that, uh, at no cost to the local taxpayer besides having to move our water lines out of the road. If our water lines were out of the road, we wouldn't have to do these projects. But our lines are in the middle of their roads and they want them out. That's fair from them. Aside from that, you guys probably saw the very large break we had Friday after hours on Spaney Street. That is a very, very large line. It's a 10-inch line. It comes from ground storage. Um, it's a big line and it's brittle. And I talked to Public Works Director Craig Miles last night, and he said it just blew out a section of it. 2 million gallons washed down South Main Friday night. 2 million gallons of clean potable drinking water washed down Main Street because the line blew up. And our hope is that it doesn't blow up again in the near future. That would be a really expensive project because that project would have to go from our ground storage tank on First Street over by the old Veterans Cemetery, weave across Spaney Street, and then over to Webster Street. It's a really long, uh, I think Public Works Director Miles estimated about 6,000 linear feet of pipe for that project. It's a lot of pipe, and it's big pipe. It'd be an expensive project. We would also need to do we need to do some additional work down South Main. They've got really bad water pressure down on the end. And we have some small sewer projects, one on North Main that we've had in the budget the last couple of years that we've just not been able to fund. So we've got projects in the pipeline, and we've instructed, and not so much instructed, our civil engineer very much knows our trials and tribulations. And one of our commissioners was our civil engineer prior to retirement. That's Commissioner Cockrum. He knows what our infrastructure is like too. So we have very much asked our civil engineer and our public works department to begin plotting some of these projects and getting some estimates. We're going to begin to engineer them and get estimates. That way we can go and say, hey, we need to borrow X amount for this project and X amount for this project. So this is not just doing this on a whim. The can's been kicked down the road for several years. It has to be done. There are so many reasons why. I'll get into some details later. But yeah, and I've got a bunch of additional questions and answers that I built while I was traveling yesterday. So let me go back through some of these questions here. I'm gonna like them as I answer them, just so you guys know that I've kind of touched on them. So we we have projections on what the and Trevor, just real quick, we have projections on what the income would be. It's more so the cost of what our infrastructure projects are going to cost. West Main was projected, a few years ago, and then everything got so expensive. So that made it really difficult in order to try to figure out what we need to do. We originally thought that project was going to be a $3 to $3.5 million project. Right now, we're kind of thinking it's going to be roughly 4 to 4.5. The city has been stuffing some money back, and hopefully at the end of this fiscal year, without additional tax revenues or any other revenues to help pay for these projects, we're looking at having it about $2.5 million stuffed back for West Main. But the problem is that's just for West Main. We have nothing stuck back for East Main. We don't have the funds to stick anything back for West Main or Spaney Street or South Main or any other projects that we would have to do. So this is about creating a very reliable revenue stream, kind of in order to put the banks and the underwriters at ease when we go to borrow money. And I've got some scenarios that I will also play out for you guys on that one. We we've tried with grant writers. So just real quick, our civil engineer, PSC out of Carterville, it's a Benton boy, Rodney Potts, has an incredible grant writer on staff, Tammy Campbell. Like she's as good as it gets. And, thankfully for her, we just completed a grant project, I believe last year. We added, uh, we basically bored in a new water line for for AECI Sherm on Industrial Park 2. That was about $1 million project. Um, Sherm pitched in 10%. Delta Regional Authority, which is a federal grant funding agency, pitched in the other 90%. So we were the recipient of about $900,000 for that project, which added some jobs. And that's what the federal government is really about right now when it comes to grant funds, is making sure that we are able to provide jobs with them or serve low income areas. The grant that we are working on right now over on the east side in front of the high school, that's a DECO grant from the state. We actually received the disbursement last week, previous week before that now, from the state. So it's been funded actually ahead of time. Usually you have to wait and go beg for your money after you complete the project. So um, we're recipients of grants. We're working on grants. The grant landscape is so competitive, especially with these infrastructure grants. These aren't things like, we got a small AED grant. We put AEDs in all city public or city owned buildings for insurance purposes and safety purposes. We needed AEDs. AEDs are not cheap, and we were going to spend about $16,000 in AEDs. We were able to get grants to take off about $6,000 of that expense. It's not a bunch, but it's small. We are constantly working and renewing a dilapidated housing grant from the state. Our zoning and economic development coordinator, Brian Calcaterra, does a great job in stretching his grant funds and his budgeted funds to tear down old dilapidated houses and trying to get the most bang for our buck when it comes to that. And we've been the recipient. We get about $30,000 a year for that. We get rural housing grant and rural rehabilitation housing grants from HUD that Crosswalk administers. We usually get that yearly, so it's not like we are not getting any grant funds. Also, we had a grant from ASLAD for about $50,000 or so. My numbers are probably a little bit off. For Malkovich Park, a lot of that project was paid for through grant funds and also a contribution from the Egyptian Board of Realtors. So it's not like we are not gaining any grant funds. The landscape's super competitive, and when there's no money to give out or there's very little money to give out, everyone fights over the same pool. The pie doesn't get any bigger. Everyone's slices get smaller, or you get none at all. And that's the other thing. Like, our civil engineer doesn't just serve the city of Benton. They serve a lot of communities. So they're writing grants for everybody. And it's based on the need. And they score the grants. And the way they score them kind of always changes. It's not like we're providing jobs on East Main or West Main with these water lines that we have to do. The jobs are there, whether they be, fast food or retail or anything like that. But there's no new jobs being created there. But new infrastructure does help us draw people in the future because they realize that, oh, their sewer's not going to back up. They've got access to good, stable, potable water for food or for whatever they're doing. So, there are benefits on the back end, but a lot of the grant funding agencies want to see those front end benefits of jobs. That's their big thing: jobs, jobs, jobs. And if we don't, you know, that was the thing with the Petroff project. So we are constantly trying to get grants, and we can only work on so many projects at a time. Uh, but we've been fortunate to get a couple. And the one thing that I will go back to is our new sewer plant, our state of the art UV treated sewer plant. Uh, we had to get it. The EPA told us, like, we're no longer going to permit your old sewer plant. You either get this or we're going to fine you some crazy amount, or we're going to come in and build one and charge you some crazy amount. We were able to get a low interest loan through the Environmental Protection Agency, and as a matter of fact, they actually forgave about 45% of that loan. Um, so even though we took a loan and they forgave 45%, I look at that as we got a grant because we don't have to pay that money back. That sewer plant will be paid off substantially earlier than it had been planned upon. So they're all baby steps. All of these small amounts add up in the grand scheme of things. But we've tried to hire some grant writers in the last year or so. They've just not worked out. I mean, it's not that we're not trying, and we're beginning some additional training for some employees on staff to go through grant writing training. That way, we can do it in house. We don't have to outsource it and pay, you know, essentially a commission or a royalty or a finder's fee to the grant writer, which they build those into grants. But if we've got somebody on staff doing them, that's more that our money can be stretched and it can go further. Um, so, and like I said, grant writers, especially good ones, are really, really difficult to find. They're in very high demand. Uh, they definitely don't grow on trees. Um, the public hearing. So our usual Gina, our usual our usual meeting time is 5 p.m. We choose to have our public hearings before meetings. The council's already assembled, the professional staff, clerk, um, attorney, public works director, our civil engineer will be there tomorrow night. Hopefully, additional public or additional employees will be there to talk about this, because this is not just a water sewer thing. This is a public safety thing as well. Um, so I understand the frustration. And to be honest, like, I'm kind of always coming and going, especially in the fall and the summer. And 5 p.m. is hard for me to make it too. Um, so I get the frustration. I don't disagree. It was my idea to have a public hearing. Like I said, the city's not required to do public hearings when it imposes sales tax, since we are home rule, but it was absolutely the right thing to do for us to have a hearing, because you guys deserve to have your questions answered and in a timely manner. And you should know that government's not trying to do dumb stuff. Um, so I understand that frustration. I personally would like to see meetings moved to 6 or 7, but that's just my thought. I'm just one vote. And because they're at 5 doesn't mean that someone else is wrong. But my personal opinion is I wish they were a little bit later. It is what it is. Um, and that's what we've got for that one. Um, Lisa, the sidewalks will be replaced. Um, for the water lines that were ripped out on that east side of town. I don't know the timeline. Um, the street department will come back in and do that. I know that they're going to get tied up with summer road program coming up and the roads that we are getting ready to overlay. And just so everybody knows, we've said it a couple of times in council meetings. Excuse me. Um, so our summer road program, we are doing overlays of McKenzie and Forest Street by Benton 47, as well as McLeansboro Street, I think from East Main to the railroad tracks. And there's a section of that we tore up last year when we had the emergency manhole situation. We could not overlay it until it went through a thaw, a freeze and a thaw cycle. All of it's packed, so we will overlay. Hopefully, when school starts, there's some nice smooth roads over there. Also, we are overlaying. I'm there all the time and I always forget this. I believe it's McCann Street, uh, between the high school administration building and the Rich Heron Gymnasium. We just finished, or they're finishing up the water line project that we're working on over there, funded by grants. We're going to overlay that section as well. And also, we're going to overlay a section of DuQuoin Street out by the KOA. It's in pretty rough shape. So over by the airport, the KOA, that will get a milling and resurfacing as well. We are going to be able to get an additional $150,000 in MFT funds to help bridge that gap. So anything left over, if the grant won't doesn't cover sidewalks again, I I'm not a public works guy. Um, I just kind of go on based on what information I'm given. I know sidewalks were in there. I think there was some modifications for some curb and gutters that end up getting dropped from the project. But yes, the plan is to do those sidewalks. And if we can't fund it through the grants, we will have motor fuel tax money in order to complete that project. So that project may take a little bit because of the summer road program going on, but the plan is to replace those sidewalks that have been torn up in order to lay those lines. So that'll be a nice thing. You'll have new water lines and nice new sidewalks out there. Ellen, anything in the works for sewer line extending to city limits on Bailey Lane? I believe it ends at Heritage Woods. I'm not sure about that section of sewer line. I'm sure that Public Works Director Miles probably knows about it if anybody from the public is asking. I know that the last couple of years in the budget, we have talked about doing part of the water line on the North Main. I believe it's from um, I can never remember where it's from, uh, but it's about a 350,000. Well, we've got it budgeted for about $300,000. It's probably closer to 350 now. Um, but it's I know we've got some sewer projects in the pipeline out there, and I'm pretty certain that the sewer on the north side is not great. I say that, and again, it's not our guys' fault, man. Our guys bust their butts. I mean, they were sitting in there in that water. I mean, like I said, guys, that was a 10-inch line that bust on Friday. 2 million gallons of water rushed through there, and our guys are in those holes working, trying to repair. Like our guys work hard. They just can't ever get ahead because they're always playing catch up because we're not proactive. We've not been proactive. We've just been patching and band-aiding things because we've not had the money to do so. So I'm sure, Ellen, that we will have more than just a couple of sewer projects, especially if we can kind of tie them together. Oh, sorry, let me. It's a North Main sewer line replacement from Park Street to Ben's Lawn, and I can't remember if that was Ben's new place, which is now a little tractor, or Ben's old place, which is soon to be Dave's Smokehouse, which is also exciting. We have a new restaurant coming to town. So I can't totally answer that question, but I think we can probably get some answers to that. Thank you, Cole. Um, JC, the parking stuff that has been tried back and forth. If you look at old pictures, there used to be meters there. They ripped out the meters, and then we had uh, essentially a parking a police officer who was just parking enforcement. It really upset a lot of people. Um, I don't think that's something that anybody is really willing. I don't think that's a rabbit hole anyone's willing to tumble down. I know it's been tried several times. Another part of that issue is the square has three separate layers to it. The outside, so essentially think of where the beginning of the parking spaces are painted and in towards the businesses and the offices. That's all maintained by the city of Benton. The inside of the square, think of where the courthouse is at and their parking spaces and where that paint ends, it's maintained by the county. And everything in the middle of it's maintained by the state of Illinois. So our public square has three different uh, municipal governmental bodies governing it. And they all have to play nicely. And that's the one thing that we're kind of cursed, blessed and cursed in the same. Our main streets are all state roads. West Main and Bailey Lane, that's Illinois Route 14. North and South Main is Illinois Route 37, and the square, East Main is all Illinois 34. So that's nice that we don't have to maintain the surface. But when the state chooses to do a project and we have to move our stuff, we have to move our stuff. Um, but yeah, we have all those different layers of government, and I have to say, like, guys, the city of Benton doesn't own a courthouse. Because if we own the courthouse, we wouldn't be worrying about what we're trying to do with 1403 South Main or leasing office space. The county, the county built a courthouse. They had to build a courthouse. Um, it's and their hand was forced too. I had a very long conversation with Franklin County Circuit Clerk Jim Muir, and we were talking about their feasibility study prior to implementing the 1% sales tax for the courthouse. And the feasibility study stated that 30 to 35% of the income generated from that sales tax uh, comes from outside of the county, meaning that 1/3 of the revenue that paid for our courthouse wasn't paid for by anybody in the county. That's better than going to the property taxes. That's kind of why we're here with the sales tax. Uh, guys, property taxes are outrageous, not just in this county, but in this state. Uh, I don't like the fact that, if you pay your house off, you still have to pay to live there. You have to pay the government to live there. Sales tax is the most fair way. Um, you know, it gets those who are traveling through our community. Uh, it's the fairest tax if there is one. Um, and none of us think it's appropriate to dump it on the backs of the property owner, because the property owner, we're taxed enough. One thing in the question and answer that was posted this morning was, uh, what can we do with property taxes this year? So the property tax levy falls into my department. We did the 4% property tax levy increase. We can annually increase 5% without having to hold a hearing. In previous years, at least the last 5 years that I have data on, I mean, I could go get more, but I like to use relevant data. It had all been 5% increases. I thought, the general fund is in fine shape. We can begin to taper that increase down. And my hope in the future is to freeze that tax levy. Now, if this tax goes into place tomorrow night and becomes effective January 1 of 2026, I think we can absolutely explore freezing the property tax levy. The nice thing is let me grab a folder real quick. Lots of numbers, to talk about. But one thing your property tax levy really goes to is funding our liabilities, our retirement liabilities for our employees. IMRF is all front loaded, but the vast majority of your property taxes goes towards IMRF and pensions and insurance and Social Security and things of that nature for our employees. You guys want police officers, you want firefighters, and you want your water to work. And we need a codes enforcement officer. Dude's doing a great job. We're cleaning up properties. I think that's making most of us happy. The nice thing is our fire pension fund is about 86% funded, which is above the 80% benchmark the state wants. The police is a little bit lower at 77%. The nice thing is we are playing big catch up with those. And hopefully in the next 3 or 4 years, we are, if not fully funded, pretty darn close. And then we can taper off that property tax and we can divert it to, we can shut it off. We can shut that levy off and freeze it. Lowering it is always a risky measure. Most people advise against it, but if we're funding our infrastructure projects through sales tax, we can absolutely discuss maybe a potential lowering of the levy. Like, guys, government usually isn't talking about lowering things like that and actually going through with it. On top of it, one of the big things with these water lines, like I said, 2 million gallons. 2 million gallons went out Friday night. That's roughly 10% of what our inner city water bill is during the summer. I mean, that was probably a $12,000 to $15,000 leak Friday night after water loss and materials and labor, overtime, all of that. If we're not having to do that as often, we're not losing money in our water department, meaning that we can hold rates steady even in the face of an increase from inner city water, because we don't constantly have to play repairman for all of our big lines. Now, we're still going to have to repair lines. They're going to break, but our big ones aren't. And that will be a big help. So I'm trying to be proactive and be an optimist and be like, man, in a couple of years, we can maintain those rates. In the future, once you pay that sewer plant off, you can drop infrastructure rates. You can move those things off that are on the direct backs of our citizens in the city, and put them on the backs of those who are traveling through. So it's a big web. So yeah, Tanya, I think if you're talking about the courthouse, I think that tax comes off in January. That's what their latest projection is. Let me rephrase. They're expecting it to come off in quarter one. So a tax that goes into effect in, I can't remember if it went into effect in 2019 or 2020, but it goes into effect and it comes off 6 or 7 years later because the project's completely paid off. That's a huge win for us. We paid it off. We built it with pre-COVID materials and prices and paid it off with post-COVID money. Uh, that's a huge win for us. And we have a brand new courthouse, something that we're not going to have to worry about updating for a very, very long time. Um, Billy, Billy, we'll try to get somebody over there. Um, Again, these are the things like our public works guys have a lot going on, and there are times that stuff falls through the cracks. Remind us. We have a thing on our website where you can report a problem, be it a down power line, a ditch overflowing, a broken water line. You can report those problems to us, and we will be notified of it. So please utilize those. Um, because guys, we're human. We forget things. Um, uh, Josh. So yes. So so Josh, the city is gaining interest on funds that are sitting that on cash that is sitting in the accounts. So like we're not playing fast and loose and investing it per se. It's all money market, so it's super super stable. It's essentially just sitting in its checking account. I don't know what the current interest rate is. Let's call it 3.5%. And some of the things that we've done the last couple of years, we've been able to do with the interest. We bought a couple of vehicles last meeting. Actually, we bought three. They were really kind of all out of various I, slush funds, a bad word, but we take in sewer from like some landfills and things like that. So like when we bought the new work truck for the water department, that was at no cost to the local taxpayers. We're trying to buy things, vehicles for code enforcement, some stuff for airport. Like we try to buy those, basically out of the line item of interest because, that's money that we've kind of just has fallen in our lap. And, if we're gonna need to buy things, why not buy it with that and not have to utilize our taxpayer funds to do so? All of that money is taxpayer funds because it's in possession of the city. But if it's not, if it's interest gained, hey, that's just one better win for us. Uh, yes, the city's looking long term. I mean, that's kind of, we've looked short term for so long. Um, and this isn't, I think some of you all have kind of unfairly placed a lot of this on the current council. Guys, lots of councils own the responsibility of this. Um, it is what it is. Uh, you know, 4 million, $3 million seems expensive at one point, and again, you hope you get grants, but what happens if you don't get grants? You still got to do the project, so now you got to find a way to pay for it, and banks aren't going to loan you money if you don't have any ability to pay it back. Or they're going to charge you a very high interest rate, which is going to cost the taxpayers substantially more money. Um, Mr. Chard, there you go, right there. There's one of my public works guys right now uh, talking about sidewalk replacement. Uh, so Lisa, I hope you see Brian's comment talking about that. But yeah, I mean, there's the plan for the sidewalks on that east side. Um, I couldn't agree more, John. Like, I'm clearly going to agree with that statement. We have to do something, and here we are. Brent, I talked about grants earlier. We've been the recipient of a grant with Petroff Road, and we're working with grant funds on the east side of town right now. we are actively looking for them, but we can't just be waiting for grants to fall on our laps. I think that's what's got us in this position in the first place, is just waiting for stuff to fall on our laps. The other part is the EPA is not going to come in and just rescue us on this situation, kind of like they did with the wastewater treatment plant loan forgiveness, because it's not the EPA's fault. They're not forcing us to do anything with our water lines. It's because it's in the state's right of way. The lines should have never been put there to begin with. They are. It is what it is. We have to fix it now. So the state and the federal government probably aren't really looking at giving us money. Now, we may be able to secure very low interest loans from the EPA. If we do that, that's great too. If you can get a $4.5 million loan at 1 or 2%, what a great way to pay for projects and also save money for future projects. And it just kind of snowballs from there. Um, Hey, Kyler, I actually think that we are maxed out in what we can collect in video gaming revenue. Um, the the city, and this was prior to me taking my seat on the council in 2023, the city installed what they called a push tax. And I think it was 1 cent on every single time the bet button was placed. I believe that we weren't the only one, but I think all of those community, like it's not, it's a weird deal. Uh, it's kind of not really enforced because it's in the middle of a lawsuit and it's under legal challenge. If that ever becomes reality and it's upheld, the amount of tax revenue that's going to come for that is going to just explode. Which again, new source of revenue. You have the ability to go to other sources of revenue and lower them: property taxes, water and sewer rates. Um, so I think we're maxed out there. I can't for sure say, but I'm pretty certain that we are maxed out in that regard as far as what we can tax on those machines right now. Um, Brett, contact Caleb or Brian and just have them come take a look. They'll see if it meets the criterion for a more formal visit, and and go from there. I can tell you that uh, we we voted, I believe it was the last meeting or the meeting before, to actually spend some money and clean up a property. That property has been cleaned up. I drove by it when I got back into town today. Um, we are working. It is a long process to start cleaning properties up, especially with court order. And whether it's you agree with anyone agrees with it or not, those property owners are due process. We are government, albeit small. We're not the feds, but those property owners are still due process. So just get a hold of get a hold of codes, let him know the address, and he'll come out and take a look at it. I'm certain. Uh, let's see. Destiny, the gaming revenue goes directly into the general fund. Um, as a matter of fact, the video gaming revenue projection in this budget year is about $225,000. Your city services are expensive. We have a full-time fire department. We have a very good fire department. We have a very good police department. We're a couple of officers short due to some leaving. We are working on filling those vacancies. Actually, we're going to talk about that and hopefully begin that process tomorrow night. All of that costs money. You know, Government's not cheap. I don't like it, but it is what it is. It all goes into the general fund. Guys, there is no money that comes into the city that is not accounted for. This is the budget. It was posted. We had a 45-minute hearing on April 28th before it was implemented on May 1. I don't believe a single person came. That was the meeting that unfortunately the mics crapped out on us. We had really good spirited discussion. The budget is still on display on the website. The audit will go on there once it is completed by the auditors. They closed up and left site 2 weeks ago, into last week. So, guys, our money has to be accounted for, and we do a darn good job of it. If you have questions, just ask. So it's all accounted for. We talk about bills every single month. We'll pay bills tomorrow. The budget is it's a moving fluid piece. Uh, but it goes back into the general fund, and that's the one thing that government is really good at. When it gets a new source of revenue, if it's not restricted, it likes to spend it. Another part of the reason I would like to see the sales tax restricted directly towards infrastructure. Brett, don't know about Cesar and their grants. Mayor Ashmore's getting some pushed through. Again, like the grants that we're working on were put through, they've been in the works for a little while. I also don't know the need and how bad their infrastructure was. If their infrastructure was in much worse shape, they're going to be on a higher priority list. Their score is going to be higher in order to get grant funds. So that plays into it. Our infrastructure may be crappy, but it may not be in that bad a shape as compared to other communities. Or the one thing is, if the water line breaks on East Main, the vast majority of water customers can still get water through bypass, and because it's being rerouted somewhere else. They're drawing from other pieces of the line. Cesar's not that big of a community, so it would be the same for West City. West City has a larger break, and it can really affect them because they have a smaller system. So all of that plays in, and I'm not an expert on water systems by any stretch of the imagination. So, but there's so many different moving pieces when it comes to grants. Um, Barb, I don't have an answer for you. I mean, we can only do so much, and hopefully these people who are homeless, we can get them the help. That's the one we've done that the last couple of years. We've given some money to Take Action Today for their center and services, because they're trying to get help for some of these people. So all we can do is try to help them in the right direction. If they're breaking the law, that's a completely different animal. But that's what I've done on that one. Linda, regarding the city hall, the 1403 South Main, it's full of mold. It's got deep structural issues. We've talked about that several times, I believe. And again, I apologize I've been gone for a week and had a absolutely just a crazy travel day yesterday. I slept in an airport terminal, so forgive me if I'm missing my dates. But we are actually in the middle of getting an appraisal to sell 1403 South Main. We don't know what the number would be in order to fix it. And at some point, the sunk cost fallacy looms large. And at what point do we stop dumping money into a bad project? Um, it, you know, we can only do with it what somebody else wants to do with it. If someone comes in and offers and it hits within the legal threshold of what we can sell it for, we'll sell it. Um, it, it's a shame with the amount of money that the city spent on that building. Um, but again, like, that's one of those things. It was a previous council. They didn't know. Um, and who knows when those problems started? I can tell you that the mold is, by the way the inspection was, the inspector kind of said that mold didn't pop up overnight, and it's been in there for quite a while. Um, Man, it's a shame. It's a shame, and you hate it, because if you lived in the city of Benton, you bought that building twice as a taxpayer for Benton 47 and for the city of Benton. So, but the city is making a move on getting appraisal, getting some figures as far as a potential sale if someone chooses to purchase it. We have to be prepared if someone is wanting to buy it. Uh, yes, Jana. Yes. Um, Angela, I stop signing grand cars. We can probably discuss that. I mean, I don't, with stop signs, that's kind of not my expertise. When I see them, I stop. But noted. Um, so Terry, with that pipe, I I don't know. Again, I'm not a water expert. Corey can probably answer some of those. Um, a lot of the grants, and I actually kind of opened some windows. I was kind of peeling through some stuff earlier. Um, a lot of the grants when it comes to water, um, a lot of it is energy, so much of the DECO grants are clean energy grants. And well, I mean, that's not really going to help us. And when it comes to directly towards water lines for like actual infrastructure overhaul, they are really concerned about lead lines. Um, I don't know. I don't think we have any lead lines. For the love of God, don't quote me on it. Again, Commissioner Cockrum and Public Works Director Miles would know substantially better than I would. But I don't think that we have any of those lines. Um, and I'm sure that if we did, we could probably get some grant funds or at least some very low interest loans to replace those lines. But I'm almost certain that all of our mains that we are having issues with are cast. They're not ductile, they're not plastic, they're old cast, and that cast rusts and rots. And that was the thing at the time. Guys, do some research, look back. Uh, your water lines used to be made of wood. Um, that's why they call fire hydrants fire plugs, because they'd cut a section of the water line out and then they'd plug it back with another with a piece of wood. So your water lines used to be wood way back in the day. Um, they've just kind of they've went with technology, and we now know that cast is absolutely awful and it deteriorates over time, uh, really bad. Um, so that's I can't answer that as far as the asbestos stuff, but you know our what we have to replace those lines. Um, I did not intentionally match my shirt and my hat. I threw the shirt on and I decided to grab a hat that was actually sitting on my chair. And here I am. I look like the man in the yellow hat. The only thing I'm missing is Curious George. Leah, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Pamela, let's see. My project's going down, include, I know at least 3 hours. Um, the pipe projects on the east side are not sewer projects. They're just water line projects right now. So they are just strictly water. Sewer is very expensive to do. For about every dollar that you spend doing water, it costs 3 to 4 to do sewer. It's deeper. It's open pit. Um, it's not high pressure, but it is dirty. But the sewer is not being replaced there currently. Uh, Gravel. I'm sure that Public Works Director Miles will see that. Um, I hear you, Gina. A couple of things. We're about an hour. Well, I mean, we're 50 minutes into this, and guys, I'll keep going for as long as you want to sit here and listen to me ramble. I'll keep going. I'll answer questions. Um, I'm going to go through my fact sheet over here. So if I don't get to you guys super timely, just be patient with me. I'm trying to pay attention to everything. Um, but I think you guys very much understand when we would put it in place. Um, there is not currently a sunset scheduled if we were to implement the sales tax. And again, it can be repealed with a majority vote. So you may have a council in 7 years. We may get a great windfall and have some grants, and we don't need this tax. And the council may be like, let's get rid of this tax. And they can just repeal that tax. Um, so, uh, and the other part with the sunset is I don't want to say it's going to take 15 years to do it and we have to go back and ask for more, or future councils choose to use that money or unrestrict it or things of that nature. So it's kind of a double-edged sword to leave it open-ended. Um, just a quick rundown. The last 5 years of home rule sales tax. Because the home rule sales tax was actually implemented. The city of Benton became home rule in, where's my notes? 2004. It officially passed and went into effect January 1. Um, After the city of Benton went home rule in 04, they froze the real estate property tax levy for a couple of years, and then they installed the 2 cent per gallon gasoline tax. Um, in May of the following year, so May 23rd, 2025, the council voted unanimously with ordinance ordinance 0514. It installed a 1% home rule sales tax. Um, so that 1% has been on there for 20 years, almost 20 years. So it's not new. We're just adding another one. And I know no one likes new taxes. Um, just to give you a quick rundown of what the cumulative looks right now for the city of Benton. So your sales tax is 9.5%. Okay. You go to Arby's and get a Diet Coke, or you're like me, you go get your Diet Blue Dew from Mr. D's. Shameless plug, but I needed my fix. And you pay 9.5% on the price that they advertise, right? 5% of that goes to the state. Another quarter of that goes to the county. The state collects and redistributes from there. And 1% goes to the municipality. So the base sales tax rate in the state of Illinois for any municipality is 6.25%. Then in 2004, the city installed the home rule sales tax, or 2005, sorry, I had my number wrong. I was estimating last night. Moved it to 7.25%. Then in 2009, the city was approached about a 0.25% sales tax increase to fund civic center operations. That was implemented, I believe, in 2000. I have my notes here. The city implemented that on August 10th, 2009 with Ordinance 0933. They installed a 0.25% home rule sales tax to benefit the Benton Civic Center. It went into effect January 1 of 2020, and that particular sales tax, 0934, is made to amend Ordinance 0933 and puts a 30-year timeline on that 0.25% sales tax for the Civic Center. The Civic Center got a loan through the U.S. Department of Agriculture to do some substantial facility upgrades, and the USDA wanted essentially a commitment in writing that the city was not going to repeal the tax for the life of the loan. So the loan is in force for 30 years, loan, bond, whatever they chose to do. And that the city is locked to that until, I believe, 2040, 2041, somewhere in that. I'd have to get more precise paperwork for that. I will say that all of this home rule and home rule taxes that went into effect have not ever garnered a single no vote from any commissioner. I actually have the minutes from all of those meetings. City Clerk Brooke Craig put together a large stack of information regarding home rule sales tax in the city of Benton. No commissioner or mayor has voted against any of these tax increases. So that's kind of the life of that. Going back, the schools got a facilities tax put in place, I believe, in the mid 2000s. That's what is paying for, classroom upgrades and HVAC and a new facility at the high school with the football field and the turf, and the new Malkovich Collins Event Center at 47. That's paid for with that sales tax money. And then the courthouse tax went into effect in 19, and it sunsets hopefully first quarter of 2026. So that makes up your 9.5%. This would move it to 10.5% until that tax sunsets from the county. It would be fantastic if that thing sunset at the same time ours might be implemented, because then it would be a very seamless transition. Again, we have projects that have to be worked on. Brandon, you asked about the projections. Bruce, I'll get to you in a second. So these numbers are provided from the data from Treasury. In 2020, we received $640,000 in home rule sales tax. That's the 1%. So we received $640,000 in 2020. We received $795,000 in 2021, $846,000 in 2022, $893,000 in 23, $876,000. Yep, in 2024. So we are estimating, kind of shooting low, because you don't ever want to overshoot your revenue stream and bank on it being there, and then you end up with a pretty big hole. So we're estimating, roughly $800,000 to $850,000 of annual additional revenue for we're looking for that, in order to fund this. that's kind of what our projections would be, between $800 and $850,000 of annualized revenue from that home rule sales tax to go directly towards our infrastructure. So that is the projection. Again, people leave Illinois. You know, Illinois got an exodus problem right now. That number goes down. And, you know, one of the more alarming things is we get every month we get a letter, or we get a newsletter magazine from the Illinois Municipal League. And this month talked about state shared revenue estimates and forecasts. And Deloitte is expecting a drop in shared revenue from the state, both their property tax and sales tax and income tax numbers. That puts more pressure on the backs of us. Means we have to be much better stewards and much tighter with what we have, because we're going to have to be more self-sufficient. If the state's not, you know, if the state's not funneling any money down in income, property, and sales tax, we have to make it up some other place. And the one thing that we don't want to do is cut services. We need our firefighters, we need our police officers, we need our public works guys, because we like when our sewer actually goes to the wastewater plant and it doesn't back up, and we like potable water in our faucets, and we like, you know, having first responders that can get to us in a very quick manner in order to save our property, save our lives. So, and also, you know, the other things, you know, you like being able to, you know, be able to call codes if you have issues with in your neighborhood with a property, you know, city services, you like your trash service, all of these things that they go through there, and it's all outlined in the budget. Um, Jana, thank you. Um, I, it'll get voted on once. If it fails, it fails, and the city's got to find another option to pay for its infrastructure. Don't know how the hell it's going to happen. Uh, you know, it's again, if you're going to raise revenue, sales tax is probably the most appropriate answer. Property tax is not. Property taxes are outrageous. I I I just I can't, you know, this isn't something that I just was like, oh, I can't wait to raise sales tax. Man, I hope to God we raise sales tax. We need to raise rates because they're not high enough. This is not an easy task. This is not a light task. This is something that we were elected to do. We have to make decisions. Being in government is not always easy. Um, and we're going to upset people, uh, you know, but something has to be done. I think the vast majority of people understand that we have to do something. And if we don't do something now, I honestly have no idea what we do. Let me put it this way: West Main probably gets done, which is a shame because that water line's in really good shape. East Main, Spanish Street are the two that are in really dire need of replacement. So yeah, we can do West Main. No idea what we do for East Main. No earthly idea. And if you don't get grants, you're going to be stuck in a 30-year loan, paying some astronomical amount in interest. Um, you know, so it, I don't know what we do. Uh, Jeremy, it would be one of the highest. But you got to remember that the businesses are charging that directly towards their consumers. Um, you know, it's just like any of those use taxes. They charge, you know, it's broken down on your bill. Um, I actually did some calculations, and to be fair, I'm just doing the municipal sales tax rate. So everybody has that base of 6.25%. Okay. Every single municipality in the state of Illinois is base 6.25%. Now, Franklin County, much like Williamson County, um, has, you know, a lot of these counties have the schools facilities tax. That's not the tax that the city of Benton collects. You know, that tax, you know, that 1% sales tax is charged in West City and Christopher and Thompsonville and Benton and Christopher and Cesar and Aiken and, you know, Ewing. Like it's taxed in all of those places because it's a countywide tax. The same for the tax for the courthouse. So I broke it down. Um, Benton is currently 1.25%. home rule sales tax. Mount Vernon is 2.75%. Marion is 2.25 unless the business is in the Star Bond District. All of that new development they are doing is bonded against future sales tax revenues in that district. That's an additional 1%. So if you're shopping in the Star Bond District, you're paying 3.25% in home rule sales tax or use tax in the city of Marion. Frankfort, 1%. West City, 1%. Carbondale, 2.5% home rule. Heron, 2.5%. DuQuoin, 1.5 to 2%. Harrisburg is 0 to 0.75. They have a special business district where they charge an additional 0.75% on their sales tax. McLeansville does not have a home rule sales tax. Cesar is 1.25 and Christopher is 1. West City is clearly the statistical outlier. They don't need more than the 1 because of what the retail presence that they have. So, that's the other part. Do businesses care about that 1% that they're charging their consumer, which I'm sure some do. I do. I mean, I'm a small business owner, and I don't really enjoy doing my ST1 filing every single month and paying the state of Illinois sales tax, but I do. Or the fact that, Arby's or, Domino's or Mr. D's or Sonic has access to good, consistent, potable water and sewer. And better infrastructure also is a public safety issue. You know, we've talked about flushing fire hydrants. That's been kind of going on. We're testing. I think they're probably beyond the halfway point of completing their testing. Just because I've not asked of an update, so I'm pretty certain that they've been moving pretty quickly on that. But when you have really bad infrastructure with your water lines and you can't test hydrants, or you're scared to open hydrants on a bad line because it's going to break and cause a bigger issue, puts our public at risk. Having new water lines that don't break when you look at them wrong, that's a public safety deal. So that's another part of it. So this isn't just water sewer. This is public safety as well. Our firefighters have to have access to water in order to, they have to have access to water. They can't put out fires without water. So, uh, Deborah, uh, again, most of our, I mean, we're working on grants. We don't have a professional grant writer. We are beginning to do training to help internalize more of that. Most of the infrastructure grants, these big, high 6-figure, 7-figure projects, are being done through the civil engineer firm. They have all of the training, they have the mapping, they know where this stuff is going. And again, they do a great job. It's just can't get grants if there's not a lot out there that's available. Linda, because it's not the state's problem, here's the deal. We can either move them on our dime, or they can move them and send us a bill, and it's going to cost us twice as much. They're our lines, or we don't move the lines and they don't do the project. So that becomes an issue too. We want these projects done. Those business owners on West Main and East Main and 14 and Bailey Lane, they're going to have new streets and sidewalks, and it's going to add curb appeal. And when you enter the city, you're not going to have busted, we're not going to have flooding at DuQuoin Street and 14 anymore. That's also a huge issue, is the storm sewer is terrible there. So, that's getting overhauled in this project as well. I'm sure those businesses would very much enjoy not having their parking lots flooded because the storm sewer doesn't work. And again, as we do these projects and hopefully we are able to secure grants on some other things, we can keep taxes lower. The date just wouldn't have an end date because we don't know the cost of the projects. I would assume after the first couple of really large projects, West Main, East Main, Spaney Street, I think those, then you're able to actually probably reduce that tax where you don't have to have as much. in revenue, and you can just be preventative in that regard, or tackle larger projects. But again, the council, future councils can edit that however they want. There's really not a lot we can do as far as, we can restrict it, and if they unrestrict it, it's going to raise some eyebrows. But you know, again, we can put an end date on it. I don't know if it's the best idea, but if we put an end date of 15 or 20 years, which sounds like a long time, but when you realize that, 6 years down the road, we'll be finishing up, IDOT will be finishing up some of their additional phases. Well, then that taxes, it's 25% through its lifespan if it's a 20-year cycle. So I don't think, again, it's not a terrible idea. Um, but that's the best answer I have for that. Um, uh, Jeremy, our zoning and economic development coordinator has went through some awesome training as far as data analytics and our loss of what our local people are going to buy elsewhere. You're never really going to compete with the online marketplace anymore, but we can keep more. We can keep more money here. Um, Infrastructure is a big deal. Also, having access, the fact that, excuse me, exit 77 near Whittington is zoned and it's all in the municipal limits now. So, we're receiving additional revenues from the Shell station up there and the winery and the hotel and the bake shop. So, hope, and again, we're looking at, hopefully the state reopens Rend Lake Resort. What a huge boom that would be for not just Franklin County, but um, I mean, that would be Benton and Cesar would be huge benefactors if once the Rend Lake Resort opens, and you have a general manager at the Rend Lake Conservancy District that is about trying to do as much as he can with the communities around and bring people into the lake and to the Conservancy District properties, the golf course, the condos. Like, guys, there's so many pieces moving behind the scenes. Um, you know, but yeah, having infrastructure is absolutely a huge deal. And yes, having curb appeal, although it sounds a little bit off cuff, is absolutely important to businesses knowing that they have a brand new road to build on. They have very, very good infrastructure and sewer lines. Um, you know, it, Businesses look at things like that. They absolutely do. When they're looking to settle, they're looking at things like that. Sherm would not be on Industrial Park 2 if we couldn't have provided them with a larger water line to deliver the gallonage that they needed in order to do their projects. Um, Frida, then government has three ways of funding the things that we do: tax, fines, and fees. Sales tax is the most fair one. Stephanie, to catch you back up, this is about potentially putting in a home rule sales tax to pay for our failing and dilapidated infrastructure. Uh, that's the conversation. Uh, let's see what else. Yeah, we do need lower housing costs and less tax, but we also have to have we have to be able to get water to our citizens. We have to have some place for their we have to have some place for your waste to go. Um, that's what we do. Um, Myra, the I'm talking about McLeansboro Street between Joplin and uh, Illinois 34. That section of McLeansboro Street is getting a new water line, I do believe. Um, Wesley, great question. I mean, ultimately, it depends on what the citizens want. And if we could potentially have an entire turnover every 4 years. This past election, I was the only newcomer onto the council. You had a commissioner who became mayor, but he was on the council previously. So, and the other three commissioners that I served with were reelected. We could get to May 1st of 2027, and you could have a new mayor and four new commissioners. It could turn over. Ultimately, the citizens will determine what level of tax keeps them happy. Hopefully, that we have people who will safeguard the taxpayers' money and be transparent about it, which is what I'm trying to do tonight. Again, we had a budget hearing, and I get it. It was at 4:15, and I know I know that that doesn't sit well with some. It doesn't sit well with me. It doesn't. It's not great for me either. But it's what it is. What it is. Uh, you know, we're as transparent as we can be. I get it. The notice probably should have been posted earlier. Um, but here we are. Um, let's see. I'm trying to peel through this. Thank you, Melissa. Um, Stephanie, I'm not quite sure what buildings like. I'm just talking about businesses in general on the streets that have really poor water line infrastructure. I mean, East Main. I'm sure that they're tired of seeing stuff cut up all the time, so we can replace lines. I know the citizens are. Um, Jerry, that's not entirely the case. I mean, you talk about the low men on the totem pole. Um, I very much pay sales tax as a consumer, and I'm a small business owner. Um, as a matter of fact, it's I need to put the new one up. I mean, usually my ST1 certification is hanging up right there. I need to print the new one because it just got renewed. So I pay retail occupation tax every single month for my small business. So, you know, I get frustration, but there is no low man on the totem pole. We're all paying this. We're all paying it equally. We're not sticking it on the backs of the property owners or sticking it on your water bills, which I would love to see stabilize and come down at some point in the near future as well. Um, Daryl, that's the long standing history. West City came to Benton eons ago and wanted to consolidate, and Benton told them to get lost. And then all of a sudden, the interstate comes through, and development starts there. And West City, man, paved roads, very few infrastructure issues because they can be preventative about it. Um, you know, they don't have the roads, they don't have the mileage of road and infrastructure that we have to maintain. But man, they've got a great tax base for it. But that's unfair to the citizens of West City to give up what they've got to go across the bridge. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, if you live in West City or Benton, we're all Rangers. At the end of the day, we're all Rangers. But yeah, we share a zip code, but they are their very own municipality, the same as those in Heron Energy. They're Tigers at the end of the day, but they have their municipal boundaries the same as we do. It is what it is. You know, it's a shame they couldn't work something out in the end, but I'm definitely not going to sit there and say that it has to happen now because we know that's not going to happen, nor should it be expected. Um, if this is voted in Monday night, or say it's tabled and it comes to another meeting, if it is approved by the council by a majority vote, a 3-2 vote, if all five are present, it will be submitted to the Illinois Department of Revenue on October 1st. It will then be implemented on January 1st, 2026. It does not go to the ballot. It does not have to go to the ballot because the city of Benton is a home rule. Technically, there is no end at what Benton can tax. Any home rule community can implement any sales tax number they want. Now, eventually, the citizens will demand answers and they will put a stop to that. Um, if it were to get out of control. And I would very much, if I'm no longer on that council and that rate continues to climb because of poor financial management, you bet your bottom dollar that I'll be screaming from the top of the hills, just like the rest of y'all, that it's got to stop. 2.25% is not that much. It sounds like a lot, but if it goes into effect, the price of my 44-ounce Diet Blue Dew from Mr. D's does not change. If the county's tax takes another 3 months to go on, it costs me additional 3 cents to get my soda. It costs me an additional cent and a half to go get my Snickers bar or my stick of beef jerky. You have to look at it in those things. And again, we're not taxing groceries. As a matter of fact, the state has actually shifted the burden of grocery tax to the municipality. And we at the city of Benton have chosen to not reinstall the grocery tax. So that will actually fall off on January 1, saving our taxpayers. Uh, you know, uh, you know, food food is important. We have to have food to survive, and we are actually going to allow the tax to be lower on your grocery items because it's the appropriate thing to do, is to let that one expire and put it on general merchandise instead. Um, I feel like we capture the best of both worlds there. Um, I mean, who knows with EMS? I know that, for as long as I think the one we're on right now, I think it's our fourth provider that I can remember. I'm 38 years old. I remember, I think we had a couple for a while, and then one left and the other one left, and then we had Cardinal, and then they left or there was some issues, and then we had Abbott, and I think they've kind of rebranded. Again, I really don't know the the ins and outs of that. That could maybe eventually be the case where we do have to do our own EMS. Uh, what a huge expense that would be. That would be an absolutely huge expense. Um, but us and the rest of Franklin County would not make our taxpayers and citizens suffer. We would find a solution for that if we were to lose an EMS service. We are moderately prepared for that with an ambulance for the city of Benton. It's not meant to run 40 calls a day. The one thing I absolutely love is our career firefighters are EMT basic certified. Um, you know, we have good dudes. We'd have to go find more of them if we were running daily ambulance. A new hospital, that's a countywide deal. And getting a hospital certificate is extremely difficult in this day and age. Uh, the city of Benton would never get to, and ultimately it would be Franklin County. But man, if we were to lose that hospital that we have, we'd be in trouble. If we lose EMS service, we'd be in trouble. But we're kind of kicking down a rabbit hole. Um, thank you, Brandon. You cleaned that up. Uh, Daniel, that's exactly what I do as well with my business. I have flat fees and I just pay it off the top on my end. Just because no one likes those odd numbers, I figure those odd numbers out on the back end. Um, so I get it. Um, you know, uh, it's there's just so many. John, I'm just very much saying the the part out loud of like there should be no stone unturned on this. Like it's fully transparent. Um, home rule home rule information and literature is easily available. Again, like it's a transparency thing. I'll say it all day long. Um, Dora, uh, it's crucial because it's now part of an IDOT timeline. Sorry. I, that's exactly how IDOT explains it to us, and we have to do something about it. We are currently in the Campbell building. That's where our offices are at. We are potentially exploring a sale of 1403 South Main. We voted on that again, either the last council meeting or the council meeting before. It's in the works. You know, it, these things don't happen overnight. And I'm not saying that I love bureaucracy and red tape and for things to drag out forever. It's just the way some things are, whether I like it or not. Greg, uh, you're absolutely right. Uh, Yeah, I mean, Trevor, if your infrastructure projects are being funded by that sales tax, that means that you're not having to constantly dip out of your general fund and potentially cut services of police, fire, or employees or any of that. And yeah, you can keep a fully staffed police department and keep them well equipped and compensate them, you know, competitively to keep them around. All of those things, they add up. They're all little bitty threads of a huge sweater, and there's so many pieces to it. Um, Josh, it depends. We are good. We are not projected to be in the black because of this West Main project. We've been funneling money away, but also we don't like to over forecast revenues. Um, and there's a lot of things in the budget, like some various projects that we just choose not to do because we can't afford them. Um, we we are not in dire shape. We are not looking at any type of reduction in city services currently. This is more so getting out in front. If we have to pay $4.5 million, because here's the deal, guys, contractor's not going to come and say, "Well, you've got half of it paid. I'll take that, and whenever you get the rest of it, I'll take it." They're not going to work on that. You're not going to secure a contractor worth a darn if they know that you don't have the money to pay for the project. It's just like building a deck. If the contractor knows you don't have the money, he's not going to come build your deck. Um, uh, Jeremy, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And hopefully, the ability to go and lower property, freeze property taxes, potentially lower property taxes, have new infrastructure in place, the people seeing infrastructure being updated, and our schools play a big part of that too, having good schools. We have good schools. All of those attract people. They all work in tandem. But yeah, it's a very slippery slope to navigate. We've got to be able to do these things, and we've got to be able to pay for them. When you don't know how to pay for them, it gets to be, it gets to be an issue. It gets to be worrisome. Greg, uh, that's a county deal. County courthouse is not my problem. Uh, I'm just like any other county taxpayer, but it's about paid off. It's about done, and that tax will fall off. Stephanie, that would be a state deal. Um, the detention center, there's there's all kinds of different uses it maybe could go from, but ultimately you've got to look at it this way: it's a jail, it's a prison. It's got thick walls and concrete beds, and like, you know if maybe the state could appropriate some money and do some type of shelter, but the state, there's not a lot of state funding going around, and there's not a lot of federal funding going around for things like that right now. uh, yes, please come doge us, please come look at the budget, go inspect the bills anytime. I've told you multiple times, Myra, like, it's wide open. It's wide open. um, yes, Dora, is absolutely true what we're paying, but we're not paying any utilities at the county, um, because we're inside their building. So yeah, that's what we're paying every month to the county. It's $3,000. I don't know where else we'd go because we don't have any. When we can't go to the police department, they are running out of space there. A new build. A new build for a new city hall would be about $4 million. And I don't think anybody on the council right now thinks that that's a good use of the money, considering we have looming infrastructure projects underground with water and sewer that have to be addressed before we build a new city hall. We're not going to do that. And there's not a lot of property readily available that can meet our space size. The county was more than gracious to allow us in the basement of the Campbell building to set up shop there for a couple of years. We are extremely grateful, and we are very, very happy and proud to have an awesome working relationship with Franklin County right now regarding that. Like, can't stress that enough. Last couple things, guys. I know that we're Karen, because it's hard to project. We because we can't do all the projects at once. Costs will change. It's not. I mean, we can lock in a price for West Main, but if it takes longer than needed, or say we do West and East Main, and then no contractor is going to sign a contract for a water project in 2031 at 2025 prices. So it's really hard to project that. That's why I don't want to. That's why I think it's a little bit. It's probably a little bit worrisome to put or maybe not worrisome is the correct word, but maybe a little bit problematic to put a sunset on it. A longer term sunset, like 15 or 20 years, probably 20 would be most appropriate, would get the vast majority of our critical infrastructure projects taken care of. And if you think about it, you're bringing in about $20 million across that time. You know, give or take, based on $800,000, it's not exactly 20 million. Maybe call it 16. What we're kind of looking at in price range of projects is between 15 and potentially 20, depending on how deep we have to go. So that's why it's hard. So that's my answer on that one. I don't think it's a terrible idea. I just think it's really, really hard to get right unless it's something of 20 or 25 years. And I think everyone gets a little bit of little skittish when we get into really, really long sunsets when it comes to that. Trying to just kind of go back through my notes. So just real quick, general merchandise base as the state sales tax, excluding tangible personal property that must be titled. So you go buy a new car at Weeks, this tax does not affect that. You go buy a car from Jamerson, he's got a boat out there he's selling you, you don't pay this tax on it. Also, you're not paying it on, prescription drugs. The price of your prescription at Kimmel Chaplin or CVS is not going to go up with this tax. Your grocery food, your qualifying grocery food, manufactured mobile homes, aircraft, trailers, watercraft, medical appliances, they will not see an increase. You go to Arby's and get a French dip, or you go to Mr. D's and get the single #1 with cheese, and a grilled cheese, which is my go-to. You're going to see the tax increase on that. We've done the breakdown. My hope is that there is future savings with this tax being implemented. Lower property tax, stabilized, consistent, not having to raise water rates because of water loss. Those are silver linings to this. And then we're not having to pay overtime when stuff constantly breaks. Again, like I told you, I would say that the water leak on Spanish Street after a 2 million gallon potable drinking water loss and overtime and supplies is going to be between $12,000 and $15,000. That's one break. What if it breaks again? And then it breaks in another place? We can't sit on our hands on that. But we just don't want to do West and East Main. We have other mains that we have to get to. Jeremy, when the courthouse tax falls off, if the council is unsuccessful in implementing this tax, that the tax inside the city of Benton limits will drop to 8.5%. If this tax goes through, and however long the county tax is on there, your sales tax will be 10.5%. As soon as the county tax falls off, it will drop back down to 9.5%. We've been paying 9.5% since 2019 or 20. So you won't see a change. If the county's tax drops on January 1, we're in July. So, we'll have a much clearer picture towards the end of the third quarter. But if that thing drops and this is implemented, it will be a seamless transition. Uh, so that's the long and short of that. Um, like I said, we are getting grants. We aren't getting enough of them. We have more projects to do than we can get grant funds for. We're trying to be proactive on that. We are members of the Delta Regional Authority. As a matter of fact, Mayor Messersmith went through a leadership class with them. He has built some great ties with the leadership at DRA. We are also a member of Greater Egypt. They are a big help with grant writing. So, and those two places really focus on the infrastructure and the big projects. So we are members of those organizations. We are constantly prodding, trying to get some movement on stuff like that. But again, it's a competitive landscape, and these projects aren't cheap. We talked about some of the grants that we've picked up over the last couple of years. We've went through what sales tax rates are around the communities surrounding us. One scenario I wanted to give, and again, I'm not a banker. I don't know if the appropriate move is going to be to do a bond issuance for these projects or to just do a loan. The county chose to do a loan for the courthouse, and it is going to save the taxpayers an astronomical amount of money in the long term over, with the interest paid. They're going to save a boatload for us in that regard. I did a simple scenario of West Main, a $4.5 million project. Say we borrow, and we do it for 15 years because we've got multiple projects in the pipeline. So we don't want to borrow and then complete that and then move on to the next one because prices will continue to increase. We want to do as many as we can quickly, borrow them, and then get them paid off in tandem. So we say we borrow $4.5 million to do West Main, and we finance it across 15 years. Okay. Say we don't have a great funding source and our loan percentage is 7.5%. Okay. That's probably it's probably not too far off. We probably get a little bit better. Might be worse. We would do a twice annual payment. We would do two biannual payments of $254,000, and our cost would be, besides paying back the principal, we would pay about $3.1 million in interest. Now, having a funding source and securing a better interest rate, say we secure that $4.5 million across 15 years at 5.5%. We would pay $223,000 biannually and end up paying a total of $2.1 million in interest across the life of the loan. That 2% would be $1 million difference. And that's just on a basic, I just used a loan calculator for a standard loan. These are much bigger numbers than what we are normally dealing with in the private world. But that's another $1 million that could go directly back into another infrastructure project. So having the means to pay for what we borrow and having that backing, it's like having a good credit score. Having a good credit score and proof of income, you get a pretty good interest rate. You have no proof, you have low income or a bad credit score, you get a really bad interest rate because you're a potential risk. You're a higher liability. Banks like low liability. They want to know they're going to get their money back. And they want it in this situation, it looks like it's a sure thing when we've got that money, coming in. I've answered as many questions as I can. We were about an hour and a half, about an hour 40, hour 38 into this. So tomorrow night we have a hearing at 4:15. I encourage anyone who has questions, concerns, comments, you want to come and rail on us, that's fine. Like we're adults. We'll take it. We're elected. It's part of the game. Remember that we're not trying to just stuff money in places it doesn't need to be. We're trying to fix our infrastructure and serve the citizens. As a matter of fact, I believe that several candidates in the last race ran on infrastructure improvement, knowing that it was probably going to lead to some type of tax increase. Uh, Again, it's better than going to the property owners. It's better than raising your water rates to an even higher level than they have to be. Um, it's the fairest way. But please come voice your opinion, positive or negative. I've seen a lot more of the negative comments than I've seen of the positive. It's usually how it goes with these things. Um, but regardless of whether you are opposed to this or in favor of it, your opinion is important. It matters because you are a citizen and you are a taxpayer, and we are supposed to be stewards of your money, and we are supposed to be the voice for you at that council table. I take that job very seriously, as do my other commissioners and the mayor. Um, I've gotten some comments. Uh, I've gotten some comments, from you guys. Oh no, Stephanie, no. I get it. I mean, we not you, not you, Stephanie. I'm just talking in general. But I, uh, you know, I'll answer questions till I'm blue in the face. I mean, I'm very red in the face. I'm very tired. I got about an hour and a half of sleep last night. Again, sleeping on the ground of an airport terminal after a 4 hour delay previously is not enjoyable, especially after a hiking trip and I'm worn out. Um, but it's my duty to report to you guys, and I'm the one with the numbers. I'm the Commissioner of Accounts and Finance, so finance is my department, and I'm probably the best one suited to come talk about numbers. The same as Commissioner Cochran is probably the one who's best suited to talk about the actual projects that are happening or going to happen that need to happen. And Public Works Director Miles, Chief Cochran at the fire department can talk about brittle water lines and how his men have to go blocks down to not to a fire hydrant to do their job. We shouldn't be making our guys do that. And our public works guys shouldn't have to be constantly focused on, well, I have to go fix all these water leaks today because our infrastructure sucks. That's just all there is to it, guys. Maybe this is something that, I've enjoyed this. I've enjoyed, interacting. And Myra, you're absolutely right. We do work for you. We do work for you. Uh, we the people, absolutely. Yes, I am very much a constitutionalist at heart, but we also have a duty to our taxpayers to provide potable water, a place for their sewage waste to go, police protection and fire protection and first responder service. We have a duty to do that. We have to pay for those things. Um, maybe this is something that we can come back to. I would love to do this monthly or quarterly. Um, I will absolutely come back and do this uh, next spring with the budget. I think this has been awesome uh, because this is what government is supposed to be about. Uh, Greg, those are my frequent flyers. I go to Sonic a lot too, but I have to make sure that we don't talk about McDonald's and Wendy's because they're in West City, so they're not carrying any of that. But I'm very much a big fan of my French dip and Swiss and my curly fries and my 44 Diet Blue Dew. Uh, but I'm gonna, if there's no other questions, I hope you guys go back. If you have questions, if you're just now joining us, you're catching this late, go back to the start. It's long-winded. I tend to ramble on some things like that. But I want to make sure that we're transparent. We as a council, guys, we have to have your trust. Um, David, you're darn right. We are going to work our butts off to get grants. And you know what? If it's $50,000 on a $4 million project, it's $50,000 less the local taxpayer has to pay. Those are the small wins I look at. I'm notoriously cheap. I save all my change. I I reuse a lot of things, uh, not to the point of craziness, but I think all of those things, all those pennies add up. You find 100 pennies on the ground, you have $1. It's amazing that people turn their head when they see a quarter laying on the ground, but they have no problem picking up a dollar bill. Um, we have to look at things like that. So, you know, uh, if you guys were fans of this, I'll keep coming back. Maybe, maybe we can do this. Mayor Messersmith can come in and do this, and if, you know, uh, Commissioner Cochran wants to do this, or you know, or Commissioner Story or Commissioner Garvalia, if they want to come in and talk about this, or things going on, I think this is the appropriate platform. It reaches you guys better. And I know not everybody has Facebook. And as a matter of fact, this is the first time I've ever posted from the City of Benton's Facebook. I didn't want access to it because I'm the finance guy. I don't need any access to it, but I felt best versed to inform you guys. And if I take some if I take some lashings from you guys because you're upset, so be it. I have broad shoulders. I'm also a referee, so I'm used to upsetting 50% of the people in the gym. Uh, but it's taught me how to govern better. Uh, I appreciate your guys' time for coming in, and again, comments for good, comments for bad. Um, One last thing, Stephanie. Uh, Representative Severin has probably been instrumental in helping IDOT fund East Main, West Main, North Main, uh, and the thing that's getting ready to happen on Bailey Lane and Route 14. Um, that's all within their wheelhouse, and I'm sure that if grant funds become available for future projects, I'm sure that Representative Severin would absolutely love to help his district, or Senator Bryan. And even though we've had redistricting, I'm sure that Senator Fowler would not be opposed to also trying to help out a Southern Illinois community, because again, like, we all take pride in being from Southern Illinois, right? Um, you know, you know, there's just there's a lot of moving pieces, and I'm sure that if Representative Severin, has the ability to help, I'm sure that he would absolutely try to help. But also, here's the other part: Representative Severin just doesn't serve us; he serves his whole district. Senator Bryan doesn't just serve, her hometown; she serves her her whole district. So, we can't be selfish in that regard too. I am more than ecstatic knowing that West Main and East Main and some and a chunk of North Main and Bailey Lane and Route 14 are going to get substantial overhauls. That's awesome for our community, especially because North Main and Bailey Lane should not cost the city a dime, which is exciting. So, you know, that's, if you guys like this, I'll keep coming back. I'll find time to do it. I've enjoyed engaging with you guys. This is the one thing that I've really enjoyed about holding office, is my interaction with the people. Uh, Not all of it's good. Not all of it's good. No, Jeannie, no roundabouts that we know of. Uh, so uh, that's exciting. No new roundabouts, right? The square is a giant roundabout, and if the state chooses to mark it as such, that's nothing we can do about it, because they technically control the traffic in the lanes. But as far as diamond roundabouts or diamond exchanges or roundabouts like what Frankfort has, it's not happening. Uh, so guys, thank you for your time tonight. I really appreciate it. And I implore you to come out tomorrow night. And I'm still not totally versed on Robert's Rules of Order and what we can do. Our public hearing is at 4:15 tomorrow night. Um, Come early. I won't be there. I have a prior commitment. I will be coming in hot right about 4:05. Um, but we also have the council meeting. If we run long, there's public comment in the council meeting. Um, I'll stay and talk to you guys after the council meeting. Like, that's my job. This is important to me. This is important to us. And it's clearly important to you guys because you decided to take time out of your Sunday evening. Uh, and John, you're precisely right. I mean, I'm a newspaper guy. I'm a photographer. I got my career start at the Benton Evening News. I miss the days of daily small town newspapers, and the reporting of government. I go back to, that's our circuit clerk. He's an old school journalism guy. He's an old school newspaper guy, and you know he was mentored by the same guy I was. He wasn't mentored me as a photographer, but I always go back to, you know, good or bad. If you want the good published, you have to publish the bad. And, I get it. So that's why it's at 4:15, because the meeting is originally scheduled at 5. The thing is you don't have to show up at 4:15 to be heard. If you show up at 4:30 or 4:45 or 4:50, we'll listen. Our standard council meeting starts at 5. So we chose to start the hearing at 4:15. But you do not have to be present right at 4:15 to participate. And I will tell you this, I will have my computer with me and my phone. If you ask questions, and again, they're civil, and we've been pretty civil tonight, uh, I will answer them. Now, I will not answer them in the meeting at 5 o'clock beyond, but during the public hearing, I will do my best, because we don't answer questions online with the public meeting because we can't real accurately record those in the minutes like we can for the hearing. But I will do my best. So, with that regard, guys, thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday night. Bruce, I know you need my email address. I'm going to find you and send it to you. Again, guys, we're an open book. You have questions, just ask. We'll get you an answer. I'll get you an answer. Thanks for your time tonight, guys.